The woman in the red dress wasn't supposed to matter, until the billionaire spoke her name into a microphone and the entire room realized they'd mocked the wrong person. But this isn't a story about revenge. It's about two people who spent their whole lives performing, who finally found someone worth being real for. Welcome back to Tales of the Fireplace, our beautiful family and friends. We are eager to meet you, and we can't wait to share these experiences and journey with you. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let us know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow we will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now back to the story. Naomi Carter, Georgetown, Washington, D.C. Naomi Carter stood in front of her full-length mirror, the kind of stillness that comes from years of practice. Her apartment in Georgetown was modest by the standards of the people she'd be surrounded by tonight. Exposed brick, second-hand furniture made elegant through careful curation, bookshelves sagging under the weight of aerospace journals and novels by Toni Morrison and Octavia Butler. But none of that mattered right now. What mattered was the dress, navy blue, elegant but not flashy. A neckline that suggested confidence without demanding attention. She'd learned this calculus years ago. Too bold and you're making a statement. Too plain and you're invisible. The sweet spot was narrow, exhausting to find. She smoothed the fabric over her hips and studied her reflection with the clinical precision of an engineer. Hair pulled back into a low bun, sleek, professional, safe, small gold earrings, minimal makeup. The goal wasn't to stand out. The goal was to belong without giving anyone a reason to question it. Her phone buzzed on the dresser. Simone. "You look beautiful. Stop overthinking it." Naomi smiled faintly. Simone had a camera installed in her brain, apparently. Naomi, "How do you know I'm overthinking?" Simone, "Because you've been standing in front of that mirror for 20 minutes. I can feel your anxiety through the phone. Just go. Write the check. Smile. Leave." Naomi exhaled slowly and set the phone down. If only it were that simple. She picked up her clutch, small, black, expensive enough to signal she belonged but understated enough not to threaten, and checked its contents one more time. Invitation, ID, credit card, lipstick, keys. And tucked into the inner pocket, a photo. Her father. He smiled up at her from the faded image, wearing his NASA janitor uniform, arm around a much younger Naomi who beamed with gap-toothed joy. She'd taken this photo to every major event since his death 5 years ago. A reminder, a talisman. "Don't give them a reason to doubt you belong, baby girl," he used to say. "You're twice as good, so you gotta be 3 times as careful." Naomi's throat tightened. She closed the clutch and turned away from the mirror before she could second-guess the dress, the hair, the whole performance. Her Uber was already outside. Julian Hayes, penthouse, Foggy Bottom. Across the city, Julian Hayes stood in front of a different mirror, but the reflection felt just as foreign. His penthouse overlooked the Potomac River. Floor-to-ceiling windows framing the monuments like a postcard designed to impress. Everything in the space screamed success. Italian leather furniture, abstract art that cost more than most people's cars, a kitchen he never used because private chefs were more efficient. And yet, standing here in a custom Tom Ford tuxedo, Julian felt like an imposter. "Not that one." Victoria's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp and certain. He turned to find his fiancée standing in the doorway, arms crossed, her silver gown shimmering under the recessed lighting. Victoria Ashford was old money wrapped in new ambition, blonde, poised, and calculating in a way that had once impressed him. Now it just exhausted him. "What's wrong with this tie?" Julian asked, glancing down at the black silk. "It's boring," Victoria said, stepping forward to adjust his collar with the detachment of someone dressing a mannequin. "You're the keynote speaker tonight, Julian. You need to look commanding. Wear the burgundy." Julian bit back a response and reached for the other tie draped over the chair. Victoria watched him in the mirror, her expression unreadable. "You're distracted." "I'm fine." "You're never fine before these things," she said. "You get that look, like you'd rather be anywhere else." Julian's hands paused mid-knot. "Maybe I would." Victoria's laugh was soft, condescending. "Don't be dramatic. This is the Kennedy Center Gala. Half of Congress will be there. The optics alone are worth the discomfort." Optics. Julian finished the knot and turned to face her. "Do you ever get tired?" "Of what?" "Performing." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Performing is how people like us stay relevant, darling. You of all people should understand that." People like us? As if Julian had always been one of them. He glanced past her at the window, at the glittering monuments built by people who'd never had to wonder if they belonged. His phone buzzed. "Marcus, assistant. Car's downstairs. Speech notes are in your folder. Remember, light tone. Thank the donors. 8 minutes max." Julian pocketed the phone and grabbed his jacket. "Ready?" Victoria asked, sliding her arm through his like they were posing for a photo. Julian nodded, but as they stepped into the elevator, he caught his reflection in the polished steel doors, a man in an expensive suit standing beside a woman who looked perfect on paper, heading to an event that would reinforce everything he'd built. And for a brief, unguarded moment, he saw someone else. A kid in a thrift store blazer, clutching a scholarship letter, trying not to cry in front of his mother who cleaned houses to keep them afloat. The elevator doors closed. Julian adjusted his cufflinks and buried the memory. The Kennedy Center. Convergence. The Kennedy Center Gala was already in full bloom by the time Naomi's car pulled up to the entrance. Valets in crisp uniforms opened doors. Photographers angled for shots of recognizable faces. A red carpet stretched toward the grand hall, lined with floral arrangements that probably cost more than Naomi's monthly rent. Her driver navigated toward the main entrance, but construction barriers redirected them toward a side street. "Sorry, ma'am," the driver said. "Looks like VIP entrance is blocked off." "I can drop you at the service entrance. It's closer anyway." Naomi hesitated, then nodded. "That's fine." She stepped out near a side door marked Staff and Deliveries, smoothing her dress as she walked toward the main lobby. A few catering workers passed by, barely glancing at her. Inside, the transformation was immediate. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, the soft murmur of wealth and influence blending with a string quartet's rendition of Vivaldi. Naomi took a breath and stepped into the current. Meanwhile, Julian's town car pulled directly up to the red carpet entrance. Camera flashes erupted. "Mr. Hayes! Over here! Julian! Who designed the tux? Where's Victoria?" Victoria emerged first, her smile practiced and perfect. Julian followed, waving politely, shaking hands with donors and politicians whose names blurred together. A congressman clapped him on the shoulder. "Hell of a speech last quarter, Hayes. You're a natural." Julian smiled. "Thank you, Senator." Natural? If only they knew how many hours he'd spent rehearsing in front of mirrors, sanding down his accent, erasing any trace of the boy who used to say y'all and ain't. As they entered the lobby, Julian scanned the crowd out of habit, cataloging power players, potential investors, people who mattered. And then his eyes caught on someone. A woman standing near the refreshment table, alone, navy blue dress, natural elegance. She wasn't working the room or angling for attention. She was simply present. Their eyes met for half a second. Something flickered in Julian's chest. Recognition, though they'd never met. She looked away first. Victoria tugged his arm. "Come on." "Mother's already inside." Julian let himself be pulled forward. But he glanced back once. The woman in navy blue was gone. What would you do if you walked into a room and realized you didn't belong? Not because of who you are, but because of what people assumed. Drop a comment. I want to hear your story. Naomi moved through the gala with the careful grace of someone who'd learned to navigate spaces that weren't built for her. She accepted a glass of sparkling water from a passing waiter. Not champagne, never alcohol at these events. She needed to stay sharp, and positioned herself near a sculpture installation where she could observe without being cornered into small talk. The room glittered with Washington's elite. Senators laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. Lobbyists worked the edges like sharks. Socialites compared jewelry with the subtlety of boxers sizing each other up before a fight. Naomi checked her watch. Another hour, maybe two. Then she could leave with her obligation fulfilled. $250,000 donated to the Children's STEM Education Fund, her father's legacy honored, her presence noted. She didn't see the woman approaching until it was too late. "Excuse me?" Naomi turned. The woman was older, 60-something, with silver hair styled into an elegant twist and a diamond necklace that could fund a school. Her expression carried that particular blend of entitlement and impatience that came from never being told no. "Yes?" Naomi smiled politely. The woman gestured toward the refreshment table behind Naomi. "Can you fetch me a champagne? The service here is terribly slow tonight." The words hit Naomi like cold water. For a moment, she couldn't process it, couldn't believe what she'd just heard. The woman waited, expectant. Naomi's smile stayed frozen on her face, but something inside her cracked. "I'm sorry," she said carefully, voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. "I'm a guest, ma'am, not staff." The woman's eyes widened slightly, not with horror at her mistake, but with embarrassment at being corrected. "Oh," she blinked. "Well, you were standing near the service area, and I just assumed—" "You assumed wrong." Naomi's voice was quiet, controlled, but every word landed like a stone. A younger woman appeared beside the older one, sleek and blonde in a silver gown that probably cost 5 figures. She took in the scene with cool assessment. "Mother, honestly," the blonde woman's smile was razor-thin. "You can't just assume everyone in a simple dress is working the event." Simple. Naomi's hands tightened around her glass. The blonde continued, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "Though, darling, I can see how the mistake happened. Navy blue is very understated, easy to overlook." Other guests had started to notice. Conversations paused, heads turned. Someone whispered, "Isn't that the woman from the donor list?" Another voice hushed. "Oh God, Martha, you didn't—" The older woman, Martha, straightened defensively. "How was I to know? She doesn't exactly look like she belongs at a $2,000 a plate gala." The silence that followed was deafening. Naomi felt every eye on her, felt the weight of being reduced to a mistake, an assumption, an inconvenience. She could leave, should leave. But her father's voice echoed, "Don't give them a reason to doubt you belong." Naomi lifted her chin. "I belong here," she said quietly, each word deliberate, "because I donated $250,000 to this cause, and because I don't need to look like anything other than myself to deserve respect." The circle of onlookers went still. Martha's face flushed. The blonde woman, Victoria, someone murmured, smirked. "Well, that's certainly generous, though money doesn't buy class, does it?" The cruelty was casual, effortless. Naomi's vision blurred slightly at the edges. And across the room, standing near the stage entrance, Julian Hayes heard every word. Naomi didn't run. She wanted to. Every instinct screamed at her to set down the glass, turn on her heel, and walk out with whatever dignity she had left. But running would confirm what they already believed, that she didn't belong. So instead, she smiled. "Excuse me," she said softly, and walked toward the restroom with measured steps, feeling their stares burn into her back like laser points. The bathroom was blessedly empty. Naomi gripped the marble sink and stared at her reflection. The woman looking back at her was composed, elegant, professional, but her eyes told a different story. They were wet, furious, exhausted. Her phone buzzed. "Simone, how's it going?" Naomi's fingers trembled as she typed. "Naomi, I hate these people." Simone, "What happened?" Naomi, "The usual, just with more witnesses this time." Simone, "Then leave. You don't owe them performance, babe. You already wrote the check." Naomi stared at the message. She could leave. No one would stop her. She'd fulfilled her obligation. But something stubborn and wounded inside her refused. No, she was tired of leaving, tired of making herself smaller so other people could feel comfortable, tired of being the one who had to swallow shame that wasn't hers to carry. Naomi, "I'm staying." Simone, "That's my girl. Make them choke on their champagne." Naomi took a slow breath, fixed her lipstick, and walked back out. Across the venue, Julian stood frozen near the stage entrance, his prepared speech forgotten in his hand. He'd watched the entire exchange, heard every cutting word, seen the way that woman, Naomi, someone had whispered her name, had held herself together while being torn apart. And he'd recognized something in her posture, the same thing he saw in himself every time he stood in rooms like this. "I don't belong, but I'll die before I let you see it." "Julian." Victoria's voice pulled him back. She appeared at his elbow, perfectly unbothered. "That was awkward. Mother feels terrible." Julian turned to her slowly. "Does she?" Victoria blinked. "Of course. It was an honest mistake." "Was it?" Julian's voice was flat. "Or is she just embarrassed she got caught?" Victoria's expression cooled. "Don't do this." "Don't do what?" "Make this about your thing." She waved her hand dismissively. "Not everyone has a tragic backstory, Julian. Mother comes from a different generation. She didn't mean anything by it." Julian stared at the woman he was supposed to marry and realized he didn't even like her. "She meant exactly what she said," he replied quietly. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "You're being dramatic. This is a gala, not a social justice seminar. Can you please just give your speech and be charming? That's literally all you have to do tonight." His publicist appeared, tablet in hand, oblivious to the tension. "5 minutes, Mr. Hayes. Remember, light, gracious, thank the donors. 8 minutes maximum. Don't go off script." Julian looked down at his notes. Corporate. Safe. Meaningless. He thought about the woman in navy blue, the way she'd refused to apologize for existing. Then he thought about the boy he used to be, standing in a borrowed suit at his first networking event, being asked by a partner's wife if he was there to bust tables. He'd laughed it off then, made it a joke, swallowed the humiliation, because that's what you did when you wanted to survive. But Naomi hadn't. She'd stood there and claimed her space. Victoria touched his arm. "Julian, you're on in 3 minutes." Julian folded his speech notes and slipped them into his pocket. "I know," he said, and walked toward the stage. The lights dimmed. A spotlight found the stage as the MC approached the microphone, his voice smooth and practiced. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your incredible generosity tonight. We've raised over $3 million for children's STEM education." Applause rippled through the ballroom. "And now, please welcome our keynote speaker and tonight's presenting sponsor, founder and CEO of Hayes Tech Industries, Julian Hayes." The applause grew louder. Julian walked onto the stage, every step calculated, every movement designed to project confidence. The spotlight was blinding, familiar. He'd done this 100 times, but tonight felt different. He reached the podium and adjusted the microphone, scanning the crowd. Senators, CEOs, philanthropists, people who mattered, his publicist would say. And there, near the back, standing alone by a column, Naomi. She wasn't looking at him. She was staring straight ahead, spine straight, hands folded. Still here, still refusing to disappear. Julian opened his mouth to deliver his prepared remarks. "Thank you all for being here tonight. Your generosity—" The words felt hollow. He paused. The room shifted slightly. Confusion, curiosity. Julian looked down at his notes, then back at Naomi, and made a decision that would change everything. "Actually," he said, his voice quieter now, more real, "before I continue, I need to address something that happened tonight." Victoria's head snapped up from her front row seat. Her eyes were daggers. The room went still. Julian's heart pounded, but he didn't stop. "When I was 22, I attended an event like this. I'd just secured my first major contract. I was invited to celebrate with the investors." He paused, remembering. "I wore a borrowed suit, a hand-me-down from my roommate, and when I arrived, someone, a partner's wife, asked me to park her car." Uncomfortable laughter scattered through the crowd. "I tell that story sometimes," Julian continued, "as motivation, the look how far I've come narrative. But tonight I realized something. It was never funny. It was humiliating." The laughter died. "And tonight, I watched it happen to someone else. Not because of what she wore, not because she wasn't qualified, but because of assumptions. Assumptions about who belongs in rooms like this." He could feel Victoria's fury radiating from the front row, could see his publicist frantically typing on her phone. But he couldn't stop. Julian's eyes found Naomi's across the distance. "Naomi Carter," he said, his voice steady and clear. "Aerospace engineer, philanthropic strategist, one of the largest individual donors to tonight's cause, $250,000. Gasps rippled through the room. Naomi's breath caught. "She was mistaken for service staff tonight," Julian continued. "And when she corrected that mistake with grace, she was mocked, told she doesn't look like she belongs here." Martha Ashford's face drained of all color. Julian set his notes aside. "So, before I thank anyone for their generosity, I want to ask this room a question. What are we actually doing here? Are we writing checks to feel good about ourselves while maintaining the same systems that decide who gets respect and who has to earn it?" The silence was suffocating. Julian looked directly at Naomi. "Miss Carter, would you join me up here, please?" Every head turned. Naomi stood perfectly still, her heart thundering in her chest. This was a choice. She could decline, walk out, refuse to be used as Julian's redemption prop, or she could do what she'd been doing her whole life, claim space that was already hers. Naomi walked toward the stage. Her heels clicked against marble, each step deliberate, powerful. When she reached the stairs, Julian extended his hand. Naomi looked at it, then walked past it and stood beside him. Equal, not rescued, not grateful, present. The room erupted in confused applause, some genuine, most uncertain. Victoria stood abruptly and walked out, her exit theatrical and furious. Martha looked like she might faint, and Julian and Naomi stood together on that stage, two people who had just set fire to every bridge they'd carefully built. The gala descended into chaos after the speech. Donors huddled in tight circles, whispering urgently. Journalists circled like sharks who'd scented blood. Board members pulled Julian's publicist aside, their expressions thunderous. And through it all, cameras flashed, capturing the scandal that would dominate tomorrow's news cycle. Julian and Naomi didn't stay for the aftermath. They slipped out through a side exit past startled catering staff and found themselves on a private terrace overlooking the Potomac. The November air was cold, biting, but neither moved to go back inside. For a long moment, they stood in silence. The city lights reflected off the dark water below. In the distance, the Washington Monument pierced the sky, a reminder that power was always watching, always judging. Julian spoke first, his voice rough. "I probably shouldn't have done that." Naomi turned to him, studying his profile. "Probably not. My board is going to lose their minds." "Your fiancé already did," Julian laughed, sharp, humorless. Ex-fiancé, I think. That exit was pretty definitive. Naomi wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. Why did you do it? Julian met her eyes. Because watching you stand there, taking that, I couldn't just give my speech and pretend it didn't happen. You didn't know me. No, Julian admitted. But I knew what it felt like. Naomi searched his face for performance, for calculation, found only exhaustion and something raw she recognized. She walked to a stone bench and sat, the elegant dress pooling around her. After a moment, Julian joined her, keeping a respectful distance. My father was a janitor, Naomi said quietly. Julian turned to her. At NASA, Goddard Space Flight Center. Her voice was soft, almost dreamlike. He worked nights. Sometimes, when my mother was working double shifts at the hospital, he'd bring me with him. Julian listened, still. I'd sit in the hallways with my homework, watching engineers through the glass, watching them build satellites, rovers, telescopes. Naomi's eyes glistened. I wanted to be them so badly it hurt. Did your father know? He knew. Naomi smiled faintly. He'd sneak me into the observation rooms when no one was around, let me look at the blueprints, the models. He told me, one day, baby girl, you'll be on the other side of that glass. Her voice cracked slightly. One night, a lead engineer saw me. Told my father he shouldn't bring his kids to work. Said it wasn't appropriate. That NASA wasn't a daycare. Julian's jaw tightened. My father apologized. Naomi's hands clenched in her lap. Apologized for me existing in that space. Promised it wouldn't happen again. And I hated him for it. For making himself small. For teaching me that we had to shrink to survive. She exhaled slowly. Then I grew up. Got my degrees, built my career, and realized I'd been doing the exact same thing. Just in better dresses. Julian was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, voice low. My mother cleaned houses. Naomi turned to him. Rich houses. In McLean, Great Falls, Potomac. Julian's gaze was fixed on the river. I used to go with her sometimes during summer break. She'd work, and I'd sit in their pristine living rooms, doing homework on furniture worth more than our car. His hands tightened on the edge of the bench. When I was 14, we were cleaning this mansion in Great Falls. Family was on vacation in the Hamptons. The kid, same age as me, had everything. His own computer, gaming systems, bookshelves full of first editions. Julian's voice dropped. I took something, a pen. Stupidest thing. Just a pen from his desk because I don't even know what I wanted. To have something of theirs. Naomi waited. My mom found it in my backpack that night. Julian's eyes were wet now. She didn't yell. Didn't lecture. She just cried. And then she lost the job because the family accused her of theft when they found other things missing. Things she never took. Julian. She didn't blame me, he continued. She hugged me and said, it's okay, baby. We'll be okay. But I knew I'd made her ashamed, proved every stereotype they believed about us. His voice broke. So I promised myself I'd never make her feel that way again. I'd become so successful, so undeniable that no one would ever question whether we belonged. Naomi understood completely. So you built an empire. So I built a mask, Julian corrected. A performance so convincing, I forgot where it ended, and I began. They sat in the truth of that admission. Why did you speak up for me tonight? Naomi asked. You didn't owe me anything. Julian looked at her fully now. Because you didn't apologize. When that woman dismissed you, you didn't shrink. You didn't code switch or make yourself smaller to make her comfortable. You just stood there, whole. Naomi's throat tightened. And I realized, Julian continued, I've been shrinking my whole life, in every room, with every speech, even with Victoria, especially with Victoria. I chose someone who fit the image instead of someone who knew me. That's a hell of a realization to have in the middle of a gala, Naomi said softly. Julian laughed, real this time. Terrible timing. The worst. They smiled at each other, small, fragile, honest. The terrace door opened and Julian's publicist appeared, phone pressed to her ear, panic etched across her face. "Julian, we need to—" She stopped, seeing Naomi. "Oh, Ms. Carter, I didn't— We should talk." "Damage control." Julian stood. "Give me a minute." "Julian, the board." "1 minute, Rachel." The publicist retreated, unhappy but obedient. Julian turned back to Naomi. "Will you stay, please? I know tonight was a lot, but I'd like to talk more. When this calms down." Naomi studied him, this billionaire who'd just torpedoed his reputation for a stranger. "Okay," she said quietly. Relief flooded Julian's face. "Okay." He started toward the door, then paused. "Naomi? Thank you." "For what?" "For not performing," he said simply. And then he was gone, pulled back into the chaos he'd created. Naomi sat alone on the terrace, the city stretching endlessly before her. For the first time in years, she felt something dangerous blooming in her chest. Hope. 3 days passed before Naomi heard from Julian again. 3 days of her phone exploding with interview requests, think piece writers wanting her perspective, and strangers on social media dissecting every frame of that viral moment. Billionaire calls out racism at elite DC gala. Washington Post. Julian Hayes ends engagement after controversial speech. Page 6. Who is Naomi Carter, the woman who changed everything? The root Naomi ignored most of it, but she couldn't ignore the text that came Wednesday morning. Unknown number. "This is Julian. Rachel gave me your number. I hope that's okay. Would you be willing to meet for coffee? Somewhere quiet. No cameras. Just conversation." Naomi stared at the message for a full minute. She should say no. This man had just imploded his life on a stage, and proximity to that kind of chaos was dangerous. He was rebounding from an engagement, processing trauma, probably looking for validation, all logical reasons to decline. Naomi, Thursday, 2 p.m., Busboys and Poets, Anacostia, Julian. I'll be there. Thursday arrived cold and clear. Naomi got to the cafe early, choosing a corner table away from windows. Busboys and Poets in Anacostia wasn't the kind of place billionaires usually frequented, which was exactly why she'd chosen it. If Julian showed up here in this neighborhood, it would tell her something real. At 1:58 p.m., the door opened. Julian walked in wearing jeans and a simple gray sweater. No entourage, no security detail. His hair was slightly messy, like he'd forgotten to check a mirror. He looked human. He spotted her and smiled, tentative, genuine. Naomi's heart did something inconvenient. "Hi," Julian said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hi." For a moment, they just looked at each other. "You came to Anacostia," Naomi observed. "You told me to." Most people would have suggested somewhere in Georgetown, or their office. Julian shook his head. "I don't want to meet you in my world. I want to meet you in the real one." A waitress appeared, and they ordered. Coffee for him, tea for her. When she left, Julian leaned forward. "I've been watching the coverage. They're making you into a symbol." "I noticed." "How are you handling it?" Naomi considered the question. "I'm angry that it took a billionaire co-signing my humanity for people to care, but I'm also relieved that it's finally visible." Julian nodded slowly. "I'm sorry it happened. The whole thing." "Which part? The humiliation or the rescue?" "Both," Julian said quietly. "You didn't need rescuing. I made it about me when it should have been about you." Naomi blinked, surprised by his self-awareness. "Thank you for saying that," she said. Their drinks arrived, creating a natural pause. Julian wrapped his hands around his mug. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Do you ever get tired of calculating every word, every outfit, every expression?" Naomi exhaled slowly. "Every single day." "How do you keep doing it?" "I don't know anymore," she admitted. "I used to think if I was perfect enough, strategic enough, they'd have no choice but to respect me. But perfection is exhausting, and it's never enough." Julian's eyes held understanding. "No matter how successful I become, there's always someone ready to remind me I don't really belong, that I'm playing dress-up in their world." "Yes," Naomi breathed. "Exactly that." They talked for 3 hours, about code switching and the exhaustion of being the first and the only, about the weight of representation, about how success didn't erase shame, it just gave you better hiding places. Julian told her about his mother, about rebuilding their relationship after years of him being too busy climbing. Naomi told him about her work in aerospace, about walking away from it to care for her dying father, about the grief that still ambushed her in quiet moments. Neither performed, neither pretended. It was terrifying and exhilarating. When they finally stood to leave, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Julian walked Naomi to her car, hands in his pockets. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "Not for networking, not for optics, just because I want to." Naomi studied his face, open, hopeful, scared. "Julian, you just ended an engagement 4 days ago." "I know. And I don't do complicated." "I'm not asking for complicated," Julian said softly. "I'm asking for real." Naomi's defenses whispered warnings, but something deeper whispered possibility. "Saturday," she said finally. "The African American History Museum, 2 p.m. Julian's smile was sunrise. "I'll be there." As Naomi drove home, she caught herself smiling at nothing. Dangerous, her mind warned. But her heart didn't care. They drove home separately that night, but neither could stop thinking about the other. Have you ever met someone who saw the parts of you that you'd been hiding? Drop a comment below. I want to hear your story. Saturday came wrapped in the kind of perfect autumn weather that felt like a promise. Naomi arrived at the National Museum of African American History and Culture 10 minutes early, her heart doing something ridiculous every time the elevator doors opened. When Julian stepped out at 2:03 p.m. wearing a simple navy jacket and that same uncertain smile, something in Naomi's chest settled. "Hi," he said. "Hi." They moved through the exhibits slowly, reverently, past the shackles and the freedom papers, past the lunch counter stools and the Tuskegee Airmen uniforms, past 400 years of pain and resilience crystallized into artifacts. In front of a display about the March on Washington, Julian reached for Naomi's hand. She let him take it. It felt significant, fragile, real. They didn't notice the photographer until it was too late. The photo hit social media by Sunday morning. Julian and Naomi, fingers intertwined, standing before the "I Have a Dream" speech display. The image was intimate, unguarded. Two people who'd forgotten the world was watching. DC Insider, Hayes' rebound, or something deeper? Julian Hayes spotted with Naomi Carter at NMAAHC. Thoughts? Within hours, it exploded. Billionaire's new romance, social justice or social climbing? Daily Mail. Is Naomi Carter using Hayes for publicity? Conservative commentary blog, The Optics of Interracial Performative Activism. Think piece. Naomi's phone became a weapon of mass disruption, text messages, DMs, emails from journalists she'd never heard of, all asking variations of the same question, "Are you dating Julian Hayes?" But the comments were worse. She saw a come up and took it. "Respect the hustle." Gold Digger saw an opportunity at that gala and milked it. Why does she need a white billionaire to validate her? This is embarrassing. That last one came from a black cultural critic Naomi had respected for years. She sat on her couch, staring at her phone, feeling exposed in a way that made her skin crawl. Her doorbell rang. She opened it to find Julian, holding his phone, looking wrecked. "Naomi, I'm so sorry. I should have been more careful." "Come in," she said quietly. Julian entered, and she closed the door behind him. "My PR team drafted a statement," he said, pulling up his phone. "They want to release it this afternoon." Naomi took the phone and read. "Mr. Hayes and Ms. Carter are respected colleagues who share a commitment to social justice initiatives. Mr. Hayes values Ms. Carter's perspective and looks forward to continued collaboration on philanthropic efforts." The words made her feel sick. "Colleagues," she said flatly. "Naomi, I didn't write this, but you were going to release it." Julian hesitated. "I was trying to protect you. The media is vicious, and I thought if we downplayed..." "Downplayed what?" Naomi's voice rose. "Us? Whatever this is?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean, Julian?" She handed back his phone. "Because this reads like you're keeping me at arm's length publicly while wanting me privately." Julian ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I'm trying to do the right thing here. You're being attacked because of me. I've been attacked my whole life." Naomi's composure finally cracked. "The difference is, I've never had someone claim they cared about me while being ashamed to admit it." "I'm not ashamed." "Then why does every statement call me a colleague? Why haven't you posted one picture of us? Why do I feel like you're secret?" Julian's mouth opened, then closed. He had no answer. Naomi's phone buzzed. Another notification. She glanced at it and froze. A photo. Julian having lunch with Victoria. The caption, "Reconciliation? Hayes spotted with ex-fiancée Victoria Ashford at the Hay Adams." Naomi's hands trembled as she held up the screen. Julian's face went pale. "That's not..." "She wanted to return my grandmother's ring. It was 5 minutes." "Stop," Naomi said quietly. "Naomi, please. You know what the worst part is?" Her voice shook. "I actually believed you were different, that you saw me. But you're just like everyone else, brave when it's convenient, careful when it costs." "That's not fair," Julian said, his own anger rising now. "I gave a speech that destroyed my reputation for you." "For me?" Naomi laughed bitterly. "You gave that speech for yourself, Julian, to feel like a good person, to prove you're not like them. I was just the prop that made it possible. You know that's not true." "Do I?" Naomi's eyes filled. "Because from where I'm standing, you get to be the hero who called out racism while I'm the woman being called a gold digger and a sellout. You get redemption. I get conspiracy theories." Julian stepped forward. "Naomi." "Go home, Julian. I love you." The words hung in the air between them. Naomi felt them land, felt the truth of them, felt how much they weren't enough. "Love isn't enough if you're ashamed of it," she whispered. "I'm not ashamed." Naomi opened her apartment door. "Then prove it, but not to me, to yourself." Julian stood there, desperate. "Please don't do this." "I'm not doing anything," Naomi said, tears streaming now. "I'm just tired of being someone's private treasure and public liability." Julian's face crumpled. But he left. And when the door closed behind him, Naomi slid down against it and finally let herself break. Julian sat in his penthouse for 3 days, staring at his phone like it contained the answer to a question he didn't know how to ask. His publicist called 17 times. His board demanded a meeting. Victoria sent a sympathetic text that made him want to throw his phone through the window. But the only person he wanted to hear from stayed silent. On the 4th day, his mother called. "Julian Alexander Hayes, are you alive?" He almost smiled. "Hey, Mom." "Don't hey, Mom me. I've been calling for days." "I know. I'm sorry." A pause. "What happened, baby?" And Julian broke. He told her everything. The gala, Naomi, the speech, the photographers, the fight. How he'd tried to protect her and ended up making her feel invisible. His mother listened without interrupting, the way she always had when he was a kid and the world felt too big. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You still trying to prove you belong?" she asked gently. Julian's throat tightened. "What?" "You heard me. You're still that 14-year-old boy who stole a pen because he wanted to be someone else. Mom! And now you got everything. The money, the company, the respect. But you're still performing, aren't you? Still code switching, still hiding." Julian stared out at the monuments glowing in the distance. "I don't know how to stop," he whispered. "Yes, you do," his mother said. "You just did it. On that stage. When you told the truth. And it cost me everything." "Did it?" His mother's voice was soft but firm. "Or did it cost you the things that were never real in the first place?" Julian closed his eyes. "That woman, Naomi, she sounds like she sees you, the real you, not the performance." "She did," Julian said. Past tense. "Because you chose the performance over her." The words hit like a punch. "What do I do?" Julian asked. "You stop asking permission to be yourself," his mother said. "You stop letting other people's comfort matter more than your own truth. And you show that woman you're willing to stand in the fire with her. Not just beside her." "What if she won't forgive me?" His mother laughed softly. "Then you'll survive. Like you always do." "But Julian?" "Yeah?" "Stop trying to deserve love. You already do. You just gotta believe it." Across the city, Naomi sat with her best friend Simone in a wine bar in Shaw, picking at a charcuterie board she had no appetite for. "So, what are you gonna do?" Simone asked. "Nothing," Naomi said. "He made his choice." "Did he?" Simone leaned back. "Or did you make it for him?" Naomi looked up sharply. "Excuse me?" "I'm just saying, did you tell him what you actually needed? Or did you test him and wait for him to fail?" Naomi's jaw tightened. "I shouldn't have to tell a grown man not to be ashamed of me." "You're right," Simone agreed. "But did he say he was ashamed? Or did he say he was trying to protect you?" "Same thing." "Is it?" Naomi set down her wine glass. "Whose side are you on?" "Yours," Simone said firmly. "Which is why I'm asking, are you protecting yourself, or are you punishing him?" Naomi felt the words land uncomfortably. "You've been building walls your whole life," Simone continued gently. "And you're so good at it, you don't even notice anymore. But Naomi, that man stood on a stage and blew up his entire life because watching you get disrespected broke something in him. And then he had lunch with his ex. To return a ring, which you would have known if you'd let him explain." Naomi looked away. "I'm not saying forgive him," Simone said. "I'm saying, maybe ask yourself what you're really afraid of." Naomi's eyes filled. "What if I let him in and he leaves anyway?" "Then you'll survive," Simone echoed. "Like you always do. But what if he doesn't?" That night, Julian sat at his desk and did something he hadn't done since high school. He wrote a letter. By hand. 12 pages of truth. No polish, no performance, just raw honesty about his fears, his failures, and why he'd hesitated. He wrote about the boy who stole a pen. He wrote about the man who built an empire to hide that boy. He wrote about watching Naomi stand on that stage and realizing he'd spent his whole life performing confidence while she'd earned hers through fire. The last line read, "I don't know if I deserve another chance, but I'm done pretending to be anything other than a man who loves you. Publicly, messily, completely, if you'll have me." He folded the letter carefully. Drove to Naomi's apartment at midnight and slid it under her door. Then he went back to his car and waited. Hours passed. The sun began to rise over the Anacostia River, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Julian's eyes burned with exhaustion, but he didn't leave. Julian sat in that car until sunrise, not knowing if she'd ever read it. Have you ever had to choose between protecting your heart and risking it all for love? Tell me in the comments, because what happened next changed everything. Naomi woke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom window. She'd barely slept, turning Simone's words over in her mind like stones in a river. What are you really afraid of? She padded to the kitchen, her mind still heavy with questions that had no easy answers. That's when she saw it. An envelope on the floor, half hidden beneath her doormat. Her heart stopped. She picked it up with trembling hands, recognized the handwriting on the front, Naomi. For a moment, she just held it. This paper, these words, they represented a choice she wasn't sure she was ready to make. But she opened it anyway. By page 3, she was crying. By page 7, she was sitting on her living room floor. By page 12, she had made her decision. Naomi looked out her window. Julian's car was still there. He was slumped in the driver's seat, eyes closed, exhausted. He'd been there all night. Something in Naomi's chest cracked open. She threw on a coat over her pajamas and went downstairs. The knock on the car window startled Julian awake. He blinked, disoriented, then saw Naomi standing there in an oversized Georgetown hoodie and sleep shorts. Her natural hair wild around her face. She looked beautiful. He opened the door slowly, his whole body aching from sleeping in a cramped position. 12 pages? Naomi said, holding up the letter. Julian's voice was hoarse. I had more to say, but my hand cramped. Naomi almost smiled. You wrote that I deserve someone brave. Julian nodded, afraid to hope. You're right, Naomi said quietly. I do. Julian's face fell. And sitting outside my apartment for 8 hours in a car? Naomi continued. That's pretty brave. Julian's breath caught. Stupid, Naomi added, but brave. Naomi? She held up a hand. Let me finish. He went quiet. Naomi took a slow breath. I need you to understand something. I will never be palatable. I will never shrink to make other people comfortable. I'm going to call out racism even when it's awkward. I'm going to take up space. I'm going to be too much for some people. I don't want you to be anything else, Julian said. And if they come for you because of me? Naomi's voice wavered. If being with me costs you business deals, board seats, investor confidence? Julian stepped closer. Then we'll handle it. Together. Not as colleagues, not as friends, as partners. Naomi searched his eyes. You mean that? Watch me prove it. 2 days later, Julian requested a live interview on NPR. No script, no publicist, just him and the truth. The host leaned forward. Mr. Hayes, there's been considerable speculation about your relationship with Naomi Carter. Julian interrupted gently. I'm in love with her. The host blinked. Julian continued, voice steady. And I'm done letting other people define what that means. Naomi isn't my rebound, my diversity initiative, or my redemption story. She's the woman who taught me that integrity matters more than image, that love means choosing someone every day, publicly, proudly, even when it's uncomfortable. He looked directly at the camera. Naomi, if you're listening, I'm done hiding. Naomi was listening. From the green room. When the interview paused for a station break, she walked onto the set. The producer tried to stop her. Ma'am, we're live in 30 seconds. Naomi sat down next to Julian anyway, took his hand. The host's eyes went wide. When they came back from break, Naomi looked at the camera. Hi, I'm Naomi Carter, aerospace engineer, philanthropist, and the woman who's been waiting for him to figure this out. Julian laughed, tears in his eyes. Naomi continued. Love isn't a performance, it's a choice. And Julian? I choose you too. They kissed. The interview went viral for entirely different reasons than anyone expected. 6 months later, the Kennedy Center hosted another gala. Same venue, different energy. Naomi arrived in a bold crimson dress, her locks styled in an elegant updo, wearing her truth like armor. Julian walked beside her. No entourage, no performance, just presence. Martha Ashford approached them, hesitant but determined. "Miss Carter," she said quietly, "I owe you an apology, a real one." Naomi paused. "I'm listening. I was wrong, deeply, inexcusably wrong, and I've spent these months doing the work, examining my biases, listening, learning." Martha's voice shook. "I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know I see you now, and I'm sorry it took public humiliation for me to open my eyes." Naomi studied the older woman. Saw genuine remorse, not performance. "That's a start," Naomi said finally. "Keep going." Martha nodded, chastened but grateful. "I will." Later, on the same terrace where they'd first connected, Julian pulled Naomi close. The city glowed beneath them. "You know what's wild?" Julian murmured. "A year ago, I thought I had everything." Naomi looked up at him. "And now?" "Now I actually do." Naomi smiled. "Smooth." "I've been practicing." They swayed gently to music drifting from inside, no longer performing for anyone, just existing in their truth. A young black girl in a beautiful dress approached them shyly. "Excuse me, Miss Carter?" Naomi turned. "Yes, sweetheart? I saw you on TV. My mom says you're proof I can be anything." Naomi knelt down to the girl's level. "You already are everything. Don't let anyone tell you different. And don't ever shrink to make other people comfortable. Take up all the space you deserve." The girl beamed and ran back to her parents. Julian watched Naomi stand, grace and power in every movement. "You're going to change the world, aren't you?" Naomi laced her fingers through his. "We both are. Together." They danced until the stars came out, two people who'd finally stopped performing and started living. Fully seen, fully known, fully free. If this story moved you, drop a comment and tell me, what mask are you ready to take off? What truth are you ready to live? And don't forget to subscribe, because love stories like this, stories about finding the courage to be yourself fully, deserve to be told. See you in the next one.